Well, thinking about sea level rise is kind of overwhelming. Between 1900 and 2000, sea level rose by almost 8 inches. And it's already causing problems around the bay, but the rate of rise is projected to accelerate. So by 2050, we're expected to rise another 14 inches. So by 2050, 22 inches since 1900. And then by 2100, 4.5 feet more. And that's just scary. It's just plain scary. We're going to have a lot more events like what happened in New York with Hurricane Sandy. We don't get hurricanes here, but we get big storms. And the problem with Hurricane Sandy was that it came on 8 inches higher sea level, and that's why it just wiped out the entire shoreline. And so we are faced with the same kind of threat here. Tidal wetlands are of particular value in diminishing the impacts of sea level rise, particularly for the next 3 or 4 or 5 decades, because the first impacts we're going to experience from sea level rise, and they've already started now, is that we're going to get a lot more shoreline flooding during storms. And what that means is storm surge, wind-whipped waves that are big will go farther and deeper into the shoreline because they're arriving on 8 inches higher sea level than they were 100 years ago. And so they're doing a lot more damage. Well, if you put a tidal wetland between the open waters and the waves and the shoreline, all that vegetation, it actually reduces the velocity of the storm surge as it comes across the wetland, reduces the height of the waves, so by the time the waves reach the shore, it's significantly reduced the energy associated with them. They essentially are the barrier islands of San Francisco Bay. They're the flood protection from ocean storms, so they're incredibly valuable. The Bay Institute just did a study that analyzes the cost and the economic value that wetlands provide. A typical levee that we had assumed the price of or calculated the price of costs about $12 million per mile to build. We have 275 miles of flood protection levees in San Francisco Bay. So $12 million per mile, we're talking about enormous amounts of money. What we calculated was that if you use marshes in front of those levees, that you could reduce the cost of the levee and the marsh and pay for restoring the marsh by half. So it goes from $12 million per mile for a traditional levee to $6 million per mile for what we call the horizontal levee, because what it does is it stretches it out. It makes the marsh part of the levee with that storm surge reduction, the reduction of energy, the reduction of velocity of the wave. By the time you get to the levee, you need a levee that's half the height of one you would need without the marsh reduction, without the marsh protection. So you essentially, by restoring marshes in San Francisco Bay, reduce the cost of shoreline flood protection by half. Go to our website, bay.org, and read about the study and articles on sea level rise. We had articles on other bay-related things that are, if not equally urgent, equally important. You know, the King Tides initiative is a great example of how to do it in the best way, because there are lots of citizen science initiatives. We do water quality testing with people who aren't necessarily PhD hydrologists or biochemists or anything like that. But to get all these volunteers out, to go out on 1 or 2 days during the highest tides of the year and take photographs and put them online on a website and show flooding that we know has directly resulted from sea level rise is a really compelling way to get the message out to the general public and to politicians. To use photographs and the web to spread that message, essentially social media, in other words, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. So, and you don't need any training to do this. All you need to know is what time and what date to go out in what locations, to pull out your cell phone or your camera and take photographs that are kind of shocking when you see the flooding that's going on caused by sea level rise already.